Hi, this is Hot Chocolate with Paul, your Sunday morning chat for people on the sunny side of 60. I'm recording this on my cruise ship, and I don't have hot chocolate with me, so we'll settle for another type of drink. So what I want to talk to you today about is taking things in stride when things don't run perfectly. Being on a cruise ship makes me aware of people who are unhappy when things don't always go the way they would like them to go. A cruise ship is a really good example because you've paid a lot of money to go on a vacation that you've dreamed of for a long time. And then what happens? Sometimes you have delays getting on the ship. Sometimes you have delays getting off the ship. Sometimes you have to miss a port because of weather or other circumstances going on. And people can get really, really upset about that. Oh, my vacation is ruined. Well, it's unfortunate, but that's life. And speaking as somebody who's been there, I've learned that all you really got to do is just roll with the punches, take it in stride. You got to figure out what it is that you really want out of a cruise, for example. Do you just want to be on vacation? Is there a specific port you want to go to? Sure, you're going to look forward to going to any port that's on the itinerary, but weather happens. You know, sometimes the waves will be really, really high, and it's just not safe to bring the ship into that particular port. Sometimes other conditions will come up that prevent you from going there. It's in the news that people sometimes get sick when they're on vacation. For some reason, people think the norovirus on a cruise ship is something to be really feared. Yeah, it's not good for some people, but you know, there are things you can do to prevent that, such as washy. If you've been on a cruise ship, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's places all around where you can sanitize your hands when you're walking into a restaurant, for example. I sanitize my hands quite a bit, and for the most part, I have not had to deal with much sickness on a cruise ship. Fortunate for me. So how do you take things in stride? Well, like I said, you need to think about what it is that you want from a cruise. If you want to go to a particular port or particular city, you got to think about, is your goal to go to that city? Maybe you would be better off not taking a cruise ship to go there, but to drive there or take a flight if that's what it takes, or even take a train. You know, taking the train is a wonderful experience. It's very relaxing. You know, things can happen there. And it's not just for cruising, but for any kind of vacation. I remember one time I was at Disney World and we were getting on the bus at our resort to go to a park. And something was going on with the bus drivers. I don't know exactly what it was. Something to do with a change of bus drivers in their schedule. But there were a couple buses that were lined up. People were already on the buses. They were waiting for a bus driver to change. And this woman was getting very, very upset because this bus wasn't moving fast enough for her. So she started screaming at the guy who was sitting there as if he had control of the situation. Her kids were getting upset with her. She was literally screaming at the bus driver. And obviously other people on the bus were a little upset with the way she was handling herself. You know, they got it worked out, whatever they had to do. She ended up getting off the bus and going to a different bus that was also in the same loop. And when she got off, I thought to myself, have a magical day. But what ended up resulting was that we ended up sitting there for maybe 3 minutes. I mean, how bad is that? Are you going to ruin your whole day, maybe your whole vacation, just because this bus isn't moving out fast enough for you? You know, just take it in stride, roll with the punches. You're in the happiest place on earth. You're at Disney World, you know. You're not home at work or whatever you need to do at home, other responsibilities. You're at Disney World. Relax, take it easy. And I can apply this principle to other things in life too. As a wedding officiant, I very often met with couples planning their wedding, their wedding ceremony, and very often I said to them, it's not going to go perfectly. A lot of times brides and even some grooms were worried about breaking down and crying in the middle of the ceremony. Relax, it's fine. If that happens, we'll just take a pause, and when you feel ready, we'll move on. And it has happened on occasion. But even something like that it's a very emotional thing to watch anyways for the people that are sitting there. I've had some weddings where there's little kids involved, and I always say it's not going to go as planned when there's little kids involved, but it's always cute. Just roll with it. It's something to talk about later. One wedding I remember, we got to the part where the rings were supposed to be exchanged. I said, may we have the rings, please? So we had the groom's ring, but the bride's ring was missing. So you got the ring? I don't know. Do you have the ring? I don't know. Who's got the ring? So a grandmother of the bride sitting in the front row said, I have a ring that you can use for the ceremony. So she handed over the ring. We continued the ceremony. And then sometime after the ceremony, the bride's ring was found where it was left, and it was put on her finger. But the thing that stands out to me is not so much what happened during the ceremony, but immediately afterwards. Usually when the wedding is over and people are standing around ready to congratulate the bride and the groom on getting married, and the conversation turned to, where was that ring? Where was that ring? Relax. It all worked out. It was a beautiful moment where the grandmother stepped forward with her ring. Something that wasn't planned, something that was out of the ordinary, but I thought it was a beautiful moment. And it worked out fine. This goes for anything in life. The older I get, the more relaxed I am about a lot of things. My patience, I have more patience now than I used to have. I've often heard about older people having more patience than younger people. And it's true. I remember reading one time about people who were so anxious to get through a line at a grocery store. Everybody's like, hurry, 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 gotta get through, gotta get through, gotta get through, gotta get through. And then all of a sudden this older gentleman comes in, and all he put down was a big bag of wild bird seed. That's all he was there for. He stood patiently in line, and he got his bird seed so he could take it back home, and evidently put the bird food into his bird feeder so he can sit and watch the birds. People rushing in traffic all the time. If you don't need to rush, just leave a few minutes early. As a school bus driver, I get people who are obviously very impatient. They want to pass the school bus. They call up and complain, oh, this school bus made me late for work. Well, the school bus is there at the same time every morning. All you got to do is leave your house 5 minutes earlier, and you'll be past that stop before the school bus even gets there. So, those are my thoughts for today. Take it easy, relax, things will happen. Just remember, any issue you come up with, if you're not even going to remember it in 5 years, is it even worth getting all upset about it now? Take life in stride. That's all I have for today. Have a good day. Hot Chocolate with Paul is a video log of life experiences that I feel might inspire other people. I'm a minimalist 60-plus geezer in the making. Sometimes my wife Stacy will appear. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so you can catch new videos whenever they come out.